wanted to ask, what actions do you recommend that we as student activists take to both further the goals of the movement, but also protecting people that might be more vulnerable because of certain actions being taken by the government?
Those are very practical, very good questions. My view is you should set as your goal maybe April 1st or April 15th to work in conjunction with all the other colleges that had encampments across the country. And on April 1st or April 15th, you are reestablishing those encampments. Those are your rights of freedom of speech and your right of freedom of assembly. And you're not going to let university officials or the Jewish supremacist billionaire class, which was behind the crackdown in the spring, you are not going to allow them to snatch from you your right to freedom of speech. That was what happened in the spring, was the most brazen, outrageous assault on academic freedom in our country's history. There has not even the McCarthy era came close to it. Because in those couple of months, the president of Harvard University was ousted from office. The president of the University of Pennsylvania was ousted from office. A couple of months later, the president of Columbia University was ousted from office. 3 Ivy League presidents were ousted from office over the attempt or the claim that those 3 presidents have been insufficiently repressive of the right to freedom of speech. They were insufficiently repressive. And with the success that was achieved by ousting them, a shadow, a very dark shadow, descended across the country on that right to freedom of speech at college campuses. You go to many campuses now across the country, not just students, professors are terrified because they're being terrorized. They're terrified to speak about not just what's happening in Gaza, but even using a certain terminology can jeopardize, if you're a student, can jeopardize your attendance at the university, can put you in a position of maybe being deported from the country. Professors have lost their rights of tenure, which really never happens. Tenure, whatever you think of it, it's a pretty robust institution. Once you've had tenure, there are really only 2 grounds for expelling you. One was called moral turpitude, sleeping with a minor, say. Or 2, you commit some sort of crime, felony murder. But losing tenure for saying that Israel is committing a genocide, that's very unusual. I'll just give one example that's always struck me. So there was that slogan, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Personally, I didn't like the slogan, personally. But certainly, they had the right to say it. Why do I say that? There are some people in this room who are edging towards my age on this great spectrum of birth to death. And they will remember the most famous civil liberties case in our country in the 1980s there was a group in the Nazi Party which wanted to march through a community of Holocaust survivors in a place called Skokie, Illinois. So that's pretty traumatic. The Nazi Party wanting to march through a community of Holocaust survivors in Skokie, Illinois. And the case went to the courts, and what do you think the court said? Under our Constitution, they had the right. And that was a landmark decision in our country. Anyone from my generation, you say Skokie, they will know it. And now, students chanting from the river to the sea were suddenly forbidden to say it because Jewish students, or some Jewish students, said they felt unwelcome, uncomfortable, and unsafe. That was an unusual standard, unwelcome, uncomfortable, unsafe. You can imagine that the Holocaust survivors of Skokie, Illinois felt unwelcome, uncomfortable, and unsafe. Our courts ruled the Nazi Party had the right. So, a very dark shadow descended in our universities, and it's not, by any stretch of the imagination, it has not gone away. And so I believe the best strategy now, because Americans, maybe more in imagination than in fact, they cherish that right to freedom of speech. And I think if you start wearing t-shirts and selling them, or giving them away free, on the back it says, Israel, Gaza, genocide. And the front, it says, freedom of speech. And to try to combine the emotive, that means appealing to your emotions, also your emotions, the emotive value of Gaza with the emotive value of we have that right. The right to speak your mind out. As Paul Robeson, for those of you of the old generation, remember, when he sang The House I Live In, and he was himself the subject of a rabid attack on his person and his politics. And when he sang the most famous lyric where the whole audience would break out in resounding applause, the right to speak my mind out, that's America to me. And we have to revive that feeling, remind people that a very basic right, was stolen in the spring of 2024, and guess what? We're taking it back.